British Columbia. It borders the mighty Pacific Ocean and features vast mountain ranges, flowing rivers, and impressive wildlife. But the true beauty of this immense province often shines when you embark off the beaten path. Among the regions to explore is British Columbia's central interior. Known as Cariboo Country, it's situated between the Cariboo Mountains and the Fraser River. From rolling hills to snow-capped mountains to raging rivers and sandy desert, the Cariboo is a diverse landscape rich in natural elements and primed for adventure. Our journey starts at one of the 5 dealerships within the Cariboo Auto Group and takes us to historical landmarks, awe-inspiring scenery, and some of the most breathtaking places in BC accessible by car. The story of British Columbia and how it came to be has its roots in the Cariboo. Located 86.2 kilometers by car on Highway 26 from Cariboo Ford and Quesnel is a place where time stands still. Barkerville was the center of the Great Cariboo Gold Rush, meaning a surge of immigrants flooded into the Cariboo in hopes of striking gold. It's a story of new beginnings, adventure, and all too often greed, discrimination, and murder. On the route from Quesnel to Barkerville, we enter the community of Bushy Lake. Well known for its rainbow trout, Bushy Lake is a 320-acre parcel of land that was purchased by William Boucher for just $1 per acre. There are many roads in this area named after people involved in the formation of Bushy Lake, and Walken Road is one of them. Its name honors William Boucher's father, Jean-Baptiste Boucher, who is a voyager born of a Cree mother who worked for the Hudson's Bay Company. He was admired by local First Nations, who gave him the name Walken, which may mean watchman in Cree, because one of his duties was that of a watchman. At first, the relationship between the newly landed immigrants and the First Nations was one of mutual respect. First Nations people provided canoes and food and acted as guides and translators. As the number of prospectors to the region increased, so did the rush to find gold. Then the First Nations became marginalized and even terrorized on their own land to make room for those seeking riches. Now further up the road is the community of Wingdam. It's about 30 minutes by car east of Quesnel. With a population only in the hundreds, it's a sleepy town, but that may soon change as one company looks to continue the history of gold mining 160 years after the first gold rush. If a new gold rush does come back to the Cariboo, you can be sure it will be much more advanced than it was in the 1800s. Countless immigrants made the trek from Lillooet to Barkerville, so various communities sprang up along the way. There are still towns named for their distance from Lillooet. That's how 70 Mile House, 100 Mile House, and 150 Mile House got their names. The house is referring to a roadhouse where travelers could get lodging and food. Many made the trip by foot, and it would take weeks to arrive. At the time, Lillooet was known for camels. Yes, camels were the animal of choice when it came to traveling up the canyon with supplies. Considering that camels were used to move goods in other countries, it was thought they'd work just as well in BC. Local historian Richard Wright.
It's not just another bizarre story. It's like it tells us how difficult it was that somebody would import camels from the Gobi Desert to San Francisco to Victoria to get supplies to the gold fields.
Unfortunately, soon it was discovered that camels were not in fact well equipped to navigate the mountainous terrain and deep canyons of the interior. So rather than ship them back to the Gobi Desert in Central Asia, the miners simply let them go. As a result, British Columbia had wild camels roaming the interior until the last one was spotted in 1905. All of the communities along Highway 26 are connected to the gold rush in some way. Cottonwood, which is at the halfway mark from Quesnel to Barkerville, was one of the primary stops along the original Cariboo Wagon Road. The Wagon Road was developed in an effort to make traveling to and from the Cariboo goldfields easier. Before it was created, the first version of the Cariboo Road was known as the Mule Trail, an extremely hazardous cliffside path that was only wide enough for a single mule to pass. In order to lower supply costs and make transporting gold and workers safer, the construction of a $1.5 million highway began in 1861. This highway was revised 3 times over the next 25 years, serving as the main artery in and out of the gold fields and the communities that followed. The gold rush came to an end around 1867, but the rich deposits of gold found in the Barkerville region were worked by some until the mid-1930s.
I love gold!
Although gold was famously celebrated in the Austin Powers movie Goldmember, gold fever actually erupted in 1858 in Canada after the discovery by the governor of Vancouver Island, James Douglas. After the news spread, hundreds of ships filled with eager Americans, Europeans, South Americans, Australians, and Chinese traveled north across the Pacific Ocean in search of wealth and the promise of a new life. Gold is so valuable because of its properties. It's the densest of all metals and serves as a great conductor of both heat and electricity. It's also the most malleable of the elements and doesn't tarnish or corrode. Gold was the basis for the world's currency from 1870 until the First World War. It's been used as a medium of exchange because it's so highly valued and in pretty limited supply. The first known gold transaction dates back over 6,000 years. British prospector Billy Barker was the first miner to strike gold in Barkerville, which is how the town got its name and why it came to life seemingly overnight. Barkerville quickly became the largest North American city west of St. Louis and north of San Francisco. Traveling to Barkerville from the coast was not easy. Supplies of food were often exhausted before the trek was finished. Trading occurred regularly with the First Nations people along the way to help make sure that the team had food and supplies. But if it wasn't for the lack of energy and looming starvation, the prospectors' horses would understandably slow down from fatigue. When this happened, sometimes the travelers would put them down for their meat to avoid starvation. Surviving the trip was only the beginning. Once you arrived safely, the hard work began. Prospectors needed to dig deep holes in order to have any chance of finding gold. Only 1 out of every 100 prospectors ever found anything of value. When they weren't out digging for gold, the miners had to survive the elements. Most buildings were built on posts to protect residents from flash floods. Mud streets and pathways were only broken up by plank sidewalks located in the nicer areas of town. Besides the mud and the harsh working conditions, those that came to Barkerville in search of riches also had to deal with competitors driven by greed. It wasn't uncommon for men to threaten each other with their pistols after too many drinks at the saloon. Corruption and crime were abundant during the gold rush, and one notable awful tale involved a woman named Angus McVie who traveled to Barkerville from Scotland. In her hometown, Angus was a wanted woman, charged with 7 murders and multiple assaults. Angus owned a local hotel. She made her money in human trafficking, and anyone that got in her way was dealt with quickly and permanently. Over the course of the next several years, more than 59 bodies were found in the small lakes of the area, all of which were suspected to be victims of Angus. In 1885, Angus was charged with various crimes, including murder, and had been scheduled to go to trial. But before her trial began, Angus died of suicide to avoid being hanged. Treasure hunters are intrigued by the story of Angus McVie because it's said she buried much of her bounty in the nearby fields of Barkerville. Although her treasure was estimated to be between $100,000 and $150,000, only $8,500 has ever been rediscovered. The hotel owned by Angus was torn down in 1892 and moved to the other side of the road. It became a store and a post house, which still stands to this day at 108 Mile Historical Ranch. Immigrants from China played a large role in the gold rush days. Jim Ritchie is a prospector from Cherryville, British Columbia.
They were some of the best taught miners there were. I do believe in China, they actually studied on how to mine for gold. Their ancestors mined for gold. They knew how the old ancient channels ran through the country. from the glacier movement and everything, and that's the ones that they chased.
Discrimination toward the Chinese prevented them from prospecting anywhere other than on abandoned sites. Despite this racism and cruel treatment, their community thrived by providing many required services to the 20,000 prospectors who came into Barkerville in the 1860s. Operating grocery stores and restaurants and working as merchants made sense for them. White mine laborers earned $6 per day, while the Chinese earned $3.50 for the same job. The government also collected hiked claimed fees from them, yet they weren't allowed to vote. They were also prevented from purchasing crown land. If you were a Chinese male and over the age of 14, you were also required to pay an annual head tax of $10. Over the years, many Chinese immigrants lost their lives through accidents, exposure to the elements, disease, murder, and even suicide. In the Quesnel Fork Cemetery, up to 40 Chinese men and a few women are buried there from that tragic time in our history. But in Chinese culture, it's believed that the soul can't rest and is doomed to continue to wander the earth until the bones are returned to their birthplace in China. As a result, local officials were required to dig up the graves, tag the bones with contact information, and have them transported in bags to Victoria, where they would be sent back to Hong Kong. That is, until the cost to do so became too high. One of the first Chinatowns in Canada was actually set up in Barkerville during the Gold Rush. It was also one of the areas that survived the Great Barkerville Fire. The fire broke out on September 16, 1868. The cause was said to be an altercation between a miner and a local performer. The dancer had been ironing her costume in the back of the local saloon for her evening performance when a man snuck up behind her without consent. As she attempted to defend herself, a stovepipe was knocked over and quickly set the building ablaze. Because all structures were made of logs, sawed lumber, or a combination of both, the fire all but wiped out the town. In less than 20 minutes, the entire village of Barkerville was engulfed in flames. When it was over, 116 buildings had been destroyed at an estimated value of $700,000 or $13 million by today's standards. Despite the human toll, the Cariboo Gold Rush was very profitable for some. 1863 was considered to be the most profitable year, with over $4 million in gold collected from local creeks and rivers and transported out of the Cariboo region. Today, there's talk of another gold rush forming in both Wingdam and Wells. Bonanza Ledge, an existing gold mine that overlooks the town of Wells, is hoping to dig for gold for the next 16 years. It confirms that this region is still rich in resources and that gold fever is alive and well. Although Barkerville is considered a ghost town today, you can still visit to see the more than 125 historical buildings and costumed actors play out what life was like during the Great Gold Rush of the 1860s.
Good day, folks. My name is William Barker, Billy Barker. Most people call me that. And this is Barkerville, the town that they say is named after me, but it's actually named after my mine. The mine is named after me, though. In the early mining season of 1861, I made my way up here to Woodlands.
Stuart Kalid is the production manager for Barkerville's historic town park.
So if people are coming to Barkerville during the summertime, they're going to walk through our gates and they are going to see the history of the 1860s gold rush all the way up to the 1940s come to life before their very eyes. They have performers who are on the street doing scenes and tours, talking about different aspects of people's lives, and there's live theater shows. Our shops are open. There are horse carriage rides. There are restaurants. There's a bakery. The Chinese food here is excellent. And there's a lot of different cultural experiences for everyone of all ages to enjoy.
And what about visiting in the winter?
If you come here in the winter, things are very different. There's a lot of snow. It gets very cold. So all of our programming, our shops, and our restaurants, they shut down during that time. We take a little break. We start planning for the next year, but people can still come and go through our walk-in gate, explore the town, check out the buildings. There's lots of snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, snowmobiling. Our cottages are open for booking through the winter as well, so you can come and stay here and enjoy your winter's getaway in the peace and quiet of the Cariboo Mountains. The authenticity is absolutely important to what we do. We want people, when they come through those gates, to lose themselves in the history, and the best way to do that is to try and create a thick veil so that they actually feel like they've been lost back in time. So that means making sure that our accents are as authentic yet understandable as possible. The language that we are using is authentic to the time that we are portraying, and that the topic matters come very much from the time. But what we have found is that there are so many different things through history that are timeless, and we are always attempting to connect to the human condition both in the past and in the present.
And as for the summer, what is the one thing that you must see in Barkerville?
So if you're coming to Barkerville for the first time and you only have a couple hours, there's so much to see. We want to think about the one thing that you have to see while you are in town. And folks, that is the Theatre Royal Show. The show is an hour-long, family-friendly music and comedy variety show, and it features all of the townspeople that you are going to see and meet as you make your way up the street. So you've already established a relationship with some of these people, and now you're going to see them have a lot of fun on stage. So the show is all about creating a raucous time where people are going to be stomping their feet, their sides are going to be splitting because they're laughing so hard, and in a couple cases, they might even catch themselves wiping a tear away from their eye.
Here, you can imagine how the Cariboo region came to be and all that was won and lost in the process. In our next episode, we'll travel by car from Peace Country Toyota up the Alaskan Highway, over a curved bridge, and through the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. We'll visit one of the most spectacular and little-known hot springs in the province, and one of the only places you'll be able to see a rare Arctic butterfly.
By Car is a presentation of Cariboo Auto Group. We encourage you to get off the beaten path, explore the wonders of your local BC community, and connect with folks who live there. Our 5 dealerships are here to make sure your vehicle is up to the challenge. Visit CaribooAutoGroup.com to contact one of our GM, Ford, or Toyota dealers. Thanks for listening.